February 22, 2026. The Mexican military just killed the most wanted drug lord in the Western Hemisphere. But this wasn't a victory. It was the beginning of chaos. Within hours, 25 Mexican National Guard troops were dead. Over 250 roadblocks went up across 20 states. Families were trapped in a zoo overnight. An entire country held its breath. This is the story of El Mencho's final stand, and why his death might trigger even more bloodshed. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. You probably know him as El Mencho, the boss of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of the fastest growing and most violent criminal organizations in Mexico. The U.S. State Department had a $15 million bounty on his head. Why? Because his cartel was the #1 trafficker of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine into the United States. But El Mencho wasn't just a drug lord. He was a military tactician. His cartel pioneered launching explosives from drones. They planted landmines. In 2020, they even tried to assassinate Mexico's Federal Security Secretary in the heart of Mexico City, with grenades and high-powered rifles. And in February 2025, the Trump administration officially designated his cartel as a foreign terrorist organization. On Sunday, February 22nd, Mexican defense officials tracked one of El Mencho's romantic partners to a hideout in Tapalpa, a picturesque mountain town in Jalisco state, about 2 hours from Guadalajara. The Mexican military moved in. U.S. intelligence was providing support. This was the moment both countries had been waiting for. But El Mencho didn't go quietly. A firefight erupted. The cartel leader and 2 bodyguards fled into the woods. They were hit, seriously wounded. Mexican forces captured them and rushed them onto a helicopter headed for Mexico City. El Mencho died en route. 4 other cartel members were killed at the scene. In a separate location, soldiers took down another high-ranking cartel commander who was coordinating attacks and offering over $1,000 for every soldier killed. The world's biggest fentanyl trafficker was dead, but the nightmare was just beginning. Within hours, Mexico descended into chaos. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel unleashed coordinated attacks across the country. They erected over 250 roadblocks across 20 states. Vehicles were set on fire. Roads became war zones. 25 members of the National Guard were killed in 6 separate ambushes. A prison guard, a state prosecutor's agent, and dozens of cartel suspects also died. The total death toll? Over 70 people in just one day. Guadalajara, Mexico's second-largest city, shut down completely. Streets were empty. Buses stopped running. Schools across multiple states were cancelled. And here's something you wouldn't believe. Over 1,000 people were trapped overnight in Guadalajara's zoo. Families with small children sleeping in buses, too terrified to try driving home to neighboring states. One hotel worker described being picked up by her bosses in a private car because public transport wasn't running, and she had no idea how she'd get home if violence erupted again. The U.S. Embassy ordered its personnel in 8 cities to shelter in place and work remotely. American tourists in Puerto Vallarta watched smoke rise over the city from their hotel balconies. One couple from Oklahoma heard explosions and screams. They put on running shoes instead of flip-flops, just in case they needed to flee. The wife called her kids to say goodbye. So why does this matter beyond Mexico? President Trump has been hammering Mexico to crack down on fentanyl trafficking, threatening tariffs, even suggesting military action if Mexico didn't show results. El Mencho's death was Mexico's answer. President Claudia Sheinbaum's administration had been under immense pressure, and this operation, backed by U.S. intelligence, was meant to prove Mexico could handle the cartels without American troops on Mexican soil. The White House praised the operation. The U.S. ambassador said bilateral cooperation had reached unprecedented levels. But experts warn this could backfire. The Jalisco cartel is wounded but not destroyed, and when a power vacuum opens in the cartel world, rival groups move in. Analysts predict a brutal fight for control of territories once dominated by El Mencho, which could mean even more violence in the months ahead. President Sheinbaum herself had criticized the kingpin strategy in the past, taking out cartel leaders only to trigger explosions of violence as organizations fracture. Now she's betting on a different outcome. As of Monday morning, Authorities said all 250 roadblocks had been cleared. People were cautiously returning to the streets. But Mexico remains on edge. Children were playing in Tapalpa's cobblestone plaza, but gunshots still echoed outside the town. A dead body lay next to a bullet-riddled jeep on the outskirts. The world's most wanted fentanyl trafficker is dead, but the question everyone's asking isn't whether Mexico won, it's what comes next. Will this be the turning point in the war on cartels, or just the spark that ignites an even bloodier conflict? One thing's certain. The death of El Mencho has changed the game, and Mexico, the United States, and the cartels themselves are all watching to see who makes the next move. What do you think? Will this operation reduce cartel violence or make it worse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more in-depth geopolitical analysis, hit that subscribe button. We're covering the stories shaping our world, one event at a time.